A billionaire was eating dinner alone when a breaking news report made him forget how to breathe. On the screen, a single mother stood on a frozen sidewalk in Philadelphia. Her 2 children pressed against her coat, while everything they owned lay scattered around them in garbage bags and cardboard boxes. She had just been evicted. But it was not the woman's exhaustion that stopped Nolan Pierce. It was not the little girl trembling beside a mattress. It was not the boy asking his mother whether they were camping. It was the address glowing beneath the reporter. 1847 Kensington Avenue. Nolan knew that building. He owned it, and before the night was over, he would discover that the system carrying his name had destroyed hundreds of families while making him richer. Nolan Pierce was 43 years old, the chief executive of Pierce Atlas Residential, and one of the wealthiest property owners in America. His company controlled more than 14,000 apartments across 6 cities. Its portfolio was valued at nearly $3 billion. His penthouse occupied 3 floors of a glass tower on Lakeshore Drive. Beyond its windows, Lake Michigan disappeared into the February darkness. The kitchen counters were carved from Italian marble. The wine room held bottles selected by people Nolan barely remembered meeting. His dining table had 14 chairs. Only one was occupied. Nolan ate grilled salmon while reviewing messages from investors. The television played across the room, providing noise for a home that had too much silence. Then the report from Philadelphia began. The woman on the screen was Mariah Bennett, 35, a former patient care assistant and mother of 2. She had fallen 2 months behind after losing her hospital job. According to the reporter, she had repeatedly contacted the property manager asking for time. No one answered. Behind her, 10-year-old Lena clutched a school backpack against her chest. 6-year-old Caleb sat on a black bag filled with clothes, his sneakers hanging above the icy pavement. "Mom, are we camping tonight?" Mariah looked down at him. For one terrible second, fear crossed her face. Then she forced a smile. "Just for a little while, baby." Nolan set down his fork. The camera pulled back, revealing the stained brick building and the number above its entrance, 1847. His glass struck the table hard enough to spill wine across the white cloth. He opened his laptop and entered the address into the Pierce Atlas database. Unit 312. Mariah Bennett. 58 months paid on time. Then 2 missed payments. Eviction filed. Eviction completed. For 20 years, Nolan had believed distance protected him from unnecessary emotion. Numbers were clean. Policies were neutral. Buildings performed or failed. But now a child was shivering outside one of his doors, and every number on the screen had become a human face. Nolan stared at the screen. Nearly 5 years of reliability had been erased in 6 weeks, and the order that erased it carried his name. Nolan did not close the database. He kept scrolling. Pierce Atlas Residential owned 47 buildings in Philadelphia, more than 800 apartments, managed by a company Nolan had selected during a 30-minute presentation in Chicago. He remembered their charts: low operating costs, fast collections, higher returns after turnover. He did not remember asking what turnover meant for the people being turned out. That was not an accident. It was how he had been trained. When Nolan was 15, his father took him to a building on 63rd Street during the coldest week of January. Victor Pierce had started with 12 apartments and transformed them into the foundation of a national fortune. He believed every building carried 2 kinds of weight: concrete weight and financial weight. Only one mattered to him. They climbed a narrow staircase that smelled of damp plaster. On the 2nd floor, movers were carrying furniture from an apartment. A woman stood near the door with a sleeping child in her arms. 2 boys guarded plastic bags filled with clothing. The woman asked Victor for 1 more week. He walked past her. Nolan stopped. "Dad, cannot we give her time?" Victor turned, studying his son with neither anger nor sympathy. "Feeling sorry for her proves you are human," he said. "Letting that feeling change the contract proves you are weak." He placed a hand on Nolan's shoulder and guided him upstairs. "A building survives because the rules survive. Remember that." Nolan remembered. He remembered so well that eventually he stopped seeing families at all. After Victor died, Nolan expanded the company faster than anyone expected. He bought properties in Atlanta, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Cleveland. He automated rent notices, late charges, maintenance requests, and eviction referrals. Every human conversation removed from the process became another expense eliminated from a report. Investors called it discipline. Nolan called it his father's legacy. Now, in the blue light of his laptop, that legacy looked different. He opened Mariah Bennett's case notes. First payment reminder sent. Second payment reminder sent. Tenant non-responsive. Standard legal action approved. Nolan read the word again. Non-responsive. The television reporter had said Mariah called repeatedly. She had emailed. She had gone to the manager's office on Broad Street and waited nearly 2 hours. Yet, the official record reduced all of that effort to one cold word. Non-responsive. Nolan touched the silver watch on his wrist. It had belonged to Victor. His father wore it to every closing, every negotiation, every eviction hearing he considered important enough to attend. Nolan had worn it since the funeral, as if keeping time with a dead man could keep his instructions alive. The second hand continued moving. The woman on the sidewalk had run out of time. Nolan searched the database for maintenance complaints at 1847 Kensington Avenue. Dozens appeared. Failed heat, broken locks, water leaking through ceilings. Most were marked completed. Several had been closed within minutes of being submitted. He could have called an attorney. He could have ordered a public relations team to prepare a statement. He could have blamed the management company and watched the story disappear by morning. Before calling the airport, Nolan opened the original management contract. His signature appeared on page 42, beneath a clause authorizing immediate legal action after 30 days of unpaid rent. No review was required. No hardship exception was promised. No person had been ordered to knock on Mariah's door. He had approved the silence before she ever asked for help. Instead, he reached for his phone. His driver answered immediately. "I need the first flight to Philadelphia. Should I notify Marcus?" Number. The board. No one. Nolan looked once more at Mariah's payment history. 58 green entries followed by 2 red ones. The system had not malfunctioned. It had followed the rules perfectly. And for the first time, Nolan understood that perfection could still be cruel. Nolan landed in Philadelphia at 7:42 the next morning, carrying no luggage except the laptop bag on his shoulder and the silver watch ticking against his wrist. He had slept less than an hour. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Caleb sitting on a garbage bag smiling, because his mind was too young to hold the truth. A black sedan waited outside the terminal. The driver opened the rear door, but Nolan stayed on the curb. The February air struck his face colder than Chicago, wet and sharp. "Take me to 1847 Kensington Avenue," he said. "Stop 2 blocks away." The driver glanced at him, but did not ask why. The neighborhood appeared through the tinted glass. Glass towers became brick storefronts. Smooth roads became patched asphalt. A corner store had plywood over one window. A laundromat sign flickered with half its letters alive. People moved with shoulders raised against the wind. 2 blocks from the building, Nolan stepped out. His shoes touched cracked concrete. His coat cost more than many families there paid for rent. For the first time, that fact did not feel like success. It felt like evidence. He walked until he saw the number, 1847. The building was 5 stories of tired brick stained by weather and years of neglect. Rust marked the fire escapes. 1 third-floor window was sealed with cardboard. The front door hung open, held by a broken cinder block. Nolan stood on the sidewalk, staring at a property that had produced hundreds of thousands of dollars in rent, while looking abandoned by everyone except the people forced to live inside it. Then he walked in. The lobby was a narrow hallway with peeling paint dead light fixtures and a floor that bent under his steps. The air smelled of mildew, cooking oil, and winter coats that never dried. A row of mailboxes leaned away from the wall. 3 were missing doors. The elevator had an out-of-order sign taped across it. The tape had yellowed with age. Nolan took the stairs. On the second floor, a radiator knocked inside the wall, like someone trapped behind metal. A child laughed behind one door. Behind another, a television argued with itself at low volume. He knocked on apartment 204. A chain rattled. The door opened 3 inches, revealing an older woman with silver hair, eyes, and the kind of stillness that told Nolan she had spent a lifetime deciding quickly whether strangers were dangerous. "Can I help you?" "My name is Nolan," he said. "I work with the ownership group. I am looking into conditions in the building." The woman's eyes moved over his coat shoes and watch. "Then come look," she said. Her name was Evelyn Brooks. She was 72 and had lived at 1847 Kensington Avenue for 11 years. She led him into a living room, warmed by a space heater trembling in the corner. "The heat been out 22 days, she said. "I called, I wrote, I sent pictures. They marked it fixed." Nolan looked up. A brown stain spread across the kitchen ceiling. A towel was pressed into the window frame to block the wind. He opened his laptop and searched her unit. Heating complaint, completed. Water leak, completed. Window repair, completed. None of it was completed. "Did you know Mariah Bennett?" he asked. Evelyn's expression changed. "Everybody knew Mariah. That girl worked all night and still checked on me every morning. Her children carried my groceries when my knees got bad. She paid rent. She kept that apartment clean. And when she needed somebody to answer the phone, nobody did." Nolan closed the laptop. Outside Evelyn's window, the playground sat empty. For years, he had measured this place by revenue occupancy and growth. Now he was standing inside the report, and every completed task was another lie someone had been living under. Nolan left the building without speaking. The driver asked where to go next. "Market Street," Nolan said. "The regional office." He knew the address from invoices he had approved for years without reading past the final number. Cleaning, maintenance, legal filing, turnover. Words that sounded harmless until he had walked through the hallway they were supposed to protect. Harlan Property Services occupied the 12th floor of a glass building with polished floors and lemon cleaner. It was warm. Nolan thought of Evelyn's space heater and felt something tighten. The receptionist recognized his name. "Mr. Pierce, we were not expecting you." Neither was I. 8 minutes later, Richard Sloan hurried into the lobby. He was the regional director, gray suit, careful smile, damp forehead. "Mr. Pierce, this is an honor. If we had known, we would have prepared a full review." "Show me the eviction process," Nolan said. They sat in a conference room. Richard opened a laptop and projected a flowchart. Rent due on the 1st. Grace period until the 5th. Late fee on day 6. Automated notices after day 10. Legal referral after 30 days. "How much is the late fee?" $75 per day. Per day. "Within legal limits," Richard said. Nolan did the math. A tenant who missed 1 month could owe $2,000 in penalties before anyone picked up a phone. The debt was not a bridge back to stability. It was a wall built higher every morning. What happens if the tenant calls? Calls are logged through the service center. Response time depends on volume. And if the tenant comes here in person, we do not encourage walk-ins. It creates expectations we cannot support. Nolan stared at the flowchart. Every box had an arrow. None pointed toward mercy. "Pull up Mariah Bennett's file." Richard typed. The record appeared. Unit 312, non-payment, November and December. Legal action filed, possession completed. "She paid on time for 58 months, Nolan said. "Yes, but the account became delinquent. She called your office. We have no completed conversation in the log." "That is not what I said." The room went quiet. Richard cleared his throat. "Mr. Pierce, we follow your protocol. Escalation after 30 days is in the contract. Your office signed it." Nolan felt the sentence land, not as an accusation, as evidence. He had come looking for a villain and found a mirror wearing a management company's logo. Richard had done what he was paid to do. The software had done what it was built to do. The contract had done what Nolan's signature allowed. Nolan stood. "Send me every eviction file from the last 12 months. That is a large request. Then start now." He left before Richard could answer. In the car, Nolan searched for Grace Covenant Church on Broad Street. The shelter was over capacity, emergency families accepted when space allowed. "Take me there," he told the driver. Before stepping out, Nolan removed his overcoat. The coat felt like armor, and armor had no place where systems had failed people. The church basement smelled of coffee floor cleaner and damp clothing. Cots lined the walls. Children colored at folding tables. Nolan saw Mariah in the far corner. Lena slept beside her with the backpack under her head. Caleb slept with one hand wrapped around his mother's sleeve. Mariah was awake, filling an application on her knee. Nolan approached slowly. She looked up before he reached her. "Can I help you?" "My name is Nolan," he said. Mariah studied his shoes, watch and clean shirt. "I do not need pity," she said. "I need a job. I need a door that locks. I need my children to sleep without asking where home went." Nolan had no answer worthy of her. For the first time that day, he told the truth. "I came because I think my company helped do this to you." Mariah did not answer. Her eyes remained on Nolan, searching his face for the truth he had left out. "What company?" He hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Mariah lowered the application. "You own the building." Nolan felt the sounds in the shelter recede. The whispering volunteers, the humming lights, the child coughing behind a curtain. "Yes." Mariah looked toward Lena and Caleb before standing. She moved several steps away so her children would not wake. "You came here after your company put us outside. I came because I saw the report. And now you want me to make you feel better." "Number." "Then what do you want?" Nolan had spent his life answering questions with numbers, contracts, and prepared language. None of those could help him now. "I want to understand what happened." Mariah gave an exhausted laugh. "What happened is simple. I worked. I paid. Then I needed time, and nobody thought I was worth a conversation." Her story emerged in pieces. Mariah had grown up in West Philadelphia, raised by a mother who cleaned houses in Chestnut Hill. At 21, she became a patient care assistant. The work mattered. She sat beside frightened patients, changed bandages, answered call buttons, and stayed after shifts when someone had no family. She met Daniel Bennett at 26. He worked construction and could repair almost anything. After Lena was born, he built her a bookshelf from discarded wood. After Caleb arrived, he painted stars above the crib. Then Daniel fell from scaffolding at a job site in Camden, New Jersey. He never came home. Mariah buried him, returned to work, and kept her children moving forward, because grief did not stop rent from arriving. For 3 years, she survived on night shifts and arithmetic. Evelyn watched the children while Mariah worked. Mariah brought groceries upstairs and checked Evelyn's medicine before sunrise. Then the hospital cut positions. Mariah applied for 43 jobs. Employers wanted nights, weekends, and open availability. Childcare cost nearly as much as rent. Every interview ended with the same rejection. She sold the television first, then Daniel's tools, then her bed frame. She kept the children's belongings. When food grew scarce, Lena began hiding crackers from school in her backpack for Caleb. Mariah found them crushed beneath a notebook and cried on the kitchen floor with both hands over her mouth. Lena also kept the apartment key tied to a piece of blue string. "She asks me every night if it still opens our door," Mariah said. "I do not know how to tell her that someone changed the lock before she stopped believing we were going back." Nolan looked at Lena sleeping with the backpack beneath her head. For 4 days, he returned to the shelter. He brought clothing, groceries, and books. He sat with Caleb while Mariah completed applications. He listened when Lena explained that every house she drew needed a yellow door because yellow looked safe. Mariah accepted what her children needed, but offered Nolan no gratitude. He did not ask for any. On the 5th evening, a report played on the shelter television. Nolan's face filled the screen. Pierce Atlas Residential, 14,000 apartments, nearly $3 billion. Mariah stared at the television, then at the man holding a picture book beside her son. "You did not just work for them," she said. "You are them." The room became still. "You watched us lose everything, then walked in here pretending to be a stranger. I should have told you. You should have answered before we were evicted." Her voice never rose. That made every word sharper. "You broke our home and came carrying groceries, like that could make you a good man." Nolan did not defend himself. "Maybe I came because I could not live with what I saw, but I am staying because I am responsible for it." Lena had awakened. She stood beside the cot, the old key hanging from her hand. "Are you the man who took our home?" Nolan looked at the child and understood that some questions were doors. Once opened, a person could never return to who they had been before. Nolan left the shelter carrying Lena's question with him. At his hotel in Center City, the suite waited in perfect silence. A king bed, marble counters, fresh towels folded beneath warm lights. The room cost more for one night than Mariah once earned in a week. He sat at the desk and opened his laptop. This time he did not search for one tenant. He searched for all of them. Eviction filings. Every Pierce Atlas property. Previous 12 months. The system took several seconds to load. 812. Nolan stared at the number. 812 households had been removed from apartments carrying his company's name in 1 year. He opened the demographic report. 61% were single-parent households. 44% had children under 12. The average tenant had lived in the property for more than 3 years before missing a payment. These were not strangers who entered his buildings planning to ignore their leases. They were nurses, warehouse workers, drivers, cashiers, teachers, and parents who had paid until illness layoffs, reduced hours, or funerals changed the arithmetic of their lives. Nolan opened another report. Time between first missed payment and completed eviction. The median was 53 days. 53 days to lose an address. 53 days for a child to lose a bedroom. 53 days for years of reliability to become irrelevant. He whispered the number aloud. 812. His father's voice returned. A building survives because the rules survive. Nolan looked at Victor's silver watch. The second hand moved with calm precision, measuring time as if every second belonged equally to everyone. But time had never been equal. For Victor, 30 days had been a clause. For Mariah, it had been the distance between a home and a shelter floor. Nolan removed the watch and placed it beside the laptop. Then, he called Marcus Hale, his chief operating officer in Chicago. Marcus answered after several rings. "Nolan. It is after 2 in the morning. Freeze every eviction in the portfolio. Silence. What did you say? No new filings. No scheduled removals. Stop every pending case until it receives a human review." Marcus exhaled slowly. "That is 14,000 units across 6 cities. We have court dates, contractual obligations, and investors expecting enforcement. Then disappoint them. The board will not accept this without analysis. I am looking at the analysis." Nolan sent him the report. Marcus remained silent as it opened. 812 families, Nolan said. Most were paying for years before something happened. We treated temporary hardship like permanent failure. Our responsibility is to protect the company. Our company caused this. By sunrise, every regional office had received the order. By 8, the board chairman was calling. By 9, 3 directors had threatened an emergency vote to remove Nolan's authority over property operations. The company attorney warned that halting active cases could create costs, delays, and challenges from investors. For the first time since inheriting Pierce Atlas, Nolan could feel the empire resisting him. It had accepted decisions that increased profit. The moment he asked it to protect people, it treated him as a threat. Nolan listened to every warning. Then he asked one question. What did removing 812 families cost? No one had the answer. They had calculated court fees, vacancy periods, cleaning repairs, advertising, and rent increases after turnover. They had never calculated shelter beds, missed school days, lost jobs, or children sleeping with keys that opened nothing. Those costs did not appear on company reports because other people paid them. Nolan stood beside the hotel window as morning spread across Philadelphia. Below him, traffic moved through streets filled with buildings owned by people who might never enter them. For 20 years, he had believed compassion was expensive. Now he understood that its absence was merely billed to someone else. 3 days after Nolan froze the evictions, Mariah received an envelope at the shelter. Inside was an offer for a 2-bedroom apartment in the same building. The heat worked. The windows sealed. Every door had a deadbolt and chain. The apartment would be rent-free for 6 months. After that, payments would never exceed 30% of her income. A second page confirmed an interview at Temple University Hospital for a patient care position with flexible scheduling and child care assistance. At the bottom, Nolan had written one sentence. "This is not charity. This is what was owed." Mariah called that evening. "I am accepting for Lena and Caleb," she said. "Not because I forgive you. I understand. No, you do not. My daughter hides food. My son thinks every place we sleep is temporary. A new apartment does not erase that." "You are right." His answer unsettled her more than an excuse would have. "When can we see it?" "Tomorrow." The renovation crew had worked for 72 hours. Nolan had ordered repairs across the entire building, but Unit 409 was ready first. It was not luxurious. The counters were laminate. The furniture came from a warehouse. The bedrooms were small, but it was warm. Lena entered before everyone else. She tested the light switches, opened the refrigerator, checked beneath the kitchen sink. Then she walked to the front door and turned the deadbolt. Click. She unlocked it and locked it again. Click. Nolan watched from this hallway as a 10-year-old tested safety like an adult inspecting a contract. The smaller bedroom had a purple blanket, a desk, and a shelf waiting for books. Lena stood in the doorway. "Is this mine?" "Yes," Mariah said. "For how long?" Mariah paused, then crossed the room and knelt before her. "For as long as we need it." Lena took the old key from the blue string around her wrist. She placed it inside the desk drawer and closed it carefully. She did not throw it away. Some losses remain important, even after they stop being useful. Caleb ran into the second bedroom and pressed both hands against the blue comforter. He climbed onto the mattress, but did not bounce. "Mom, is this our home for real? Or are we visiting?" Mariah held his face between her palms. "This is our home. We are staying." Caleb studied her expression, searching for certainty. Then he lay down and pulled the blanket to his chin, still wearing his coat. Nolan turned toward the window. He had believed returning a home would end the story, but the shelter had followed them inside. It lived in Lena's careful hands, in Caleb's coat on the bed, in the way Mariah kept the envelope folded in her pocket as proof that permission had been granted. Damage did not disappear when circumstances changed. Sometimes it waited quietly inside the people who survived it. Mariah attended the interview at Temple University Hospital 2 days later. She arrived early, wearing borrowed shoes and carrying a folder containing every certification she had earned. The interviewer reviewed her experience and offered her a position before she left the building. When she called Nolan, her voice remained guarded. "I got the job." "You earned the job." There was silence. "Thank you for arranging the interview," she said. It was the first gratitude she had offered him, and Nolan understood it was not forgiveness. It was simply truth. That evening, Mariah cooked pasta, while Lena arranged books, and Caleb built a tower on the living room floor. The sounds traveled through the apartment: water boiling, cabinet doors closing, children laughing without whispering. Nolan stood outside long enough to hear the deadbolt click behind him. Giving one family a home had taken 3 days. Changing the machine that removed them would demand everything he had and more courage than money could ever purchase. Nolan returned to Chicago and terminated contracts with Harlan Property Services. The legal department called it reckless. Marcus called it dangerous. The board called a meeting before Nolan had removed his coat. For 6 hours, directors argued across a table. They warned about lawsuits, falling revenue, and investor confidence. One director said Pierce Atlas was a business, not a social agency. Nolan placed Mariah's payment record on the screen. 58 months on time, 2 months late, 11 unanswered calls, 1 family removed. "This was our business," he said. "We simply refused to look at the entire transaction." The board vote was narrow. Nolan kept control by 1 vote, but only after surrendering authority over several future acquisitions. The empire would grow more slowly. For the first time, that felt like progress. Pierce Atlas created an internal management division built around 3 requirements. Before any eviction filing, a staff member had to make 3 direct contact attempts, including 1 visit to the tenant's door. Every struggling tenant would be offered a meeting with a trained advocate whose responsibility was to represent the resident, not the property. Every case involving job loss, illness, reduced hours, or a death in the family would enter a 90-day hardship review without late fees. Nolan also created an emergency fund to cover temporary gaps. It was not presented as charity. Tenants contributed through rent, the company matched the money, and an independent committee reviewed requests. Then Mariah asked this question no executive had expected. Who chooses the committee? Nolan told her the company would appoint members. Then it still belongs to you, she said. She agreed to advise the program only if tenants received voting power over hardship decisions, maintenance priorities, and advocate hiring. The board resisted again. Nolan accepted her condition. Mariah started work at Temple University Hospital and enrolled in an online licensed practical nurse program. After her children slept, she studied anatomy at the kitchen table. Lena taped a handwritten note above her books. "You can do it, Mom." Caleb drew stars around the words. 6 months after the reforms began, the first results arrived. Eviction filings dropped by 76%. Tenant retention rose by 31%. Revenue fell slightly during the first quarter, then recovered as vacancy periods, court expenses, repairs, and advertising costs declined. The company had spent less money keeping families housed than it once spent removing them. Nolan studied the report in his Chicago office. It was still a spreadsheet, the language he understood best. But now, each number carried a different meaning. Fewer empty units meant fewer children changing schools. Lower legal costs meant fewer parents standing alone in court. Higher retention meant more doors remaining home. Victor had taught Nolan that compassion weakened a business. The evidence now proved that cruelty had never been strength. It had only been an expense hidden in someone else's life. Nolan visited Philadelphia once each month. He brought books for Lena and building sets for Caleb. But the most important thing he brought was consistency. He showed up. Mariah still did not call him a hero. That was exactly why he trusted her. Heroes expect gratitude. Accountability expects correction. And for the first time, the people living behind Pierce Atlas doors possessed the power to demand it. 18 months later, Nolan stood inside a building he recognized. The entrance lock worked. The hallway lights glowed above walls. The elevator moved between floors without groaning. Evelyn's radiator warmed her apartment, and the stain above her kitchen had disappeared. On the ground floor, an abandoned storage room had become a community center filled with tenants, advocates, hospital workers, and reporters. Nolan stepped to the podium and announced the Open Door Initiative, a foundation providing emergency rent assistance, legal representation, and tenant advocacy. Then Mariah joined him. She wore blue and carried the calm of someone who had rebuilt her life without pretending the damage never happened. 3 weeks earlier, she had passed her licensed practical nurse examination. "I am not here because I am special," she told the room. "I am here because a camera happened to find me." Millions of families face a door closing, and most of them never appear on television. She looked toward Lena and Caleb. Nobody should become homeless because 2 months erased years of doing everything right. After the crowd left, Lena approached Nolan. She was taller now, though she carried her backpack. She placed something in his palm. "The apartment key. It does not open our door anymore," she said. "I know. I think you should keep it, so you remember not to close another one." Nolan wrapped his fingers around the key. That evening, he returned to his penthouse on Lakeshore Drive. The table still had 14 chairs. Lake Michigan still stretched into darkness. But the silence no longer belonged to Victor Pierce. The television showed a report from Philadelphia. Behind the reporter, children played outside the restored building. Caleb chased a ball across the pavement. Lena sat beneath a tree drawing a house with a yellow door. Nolan reached into his pocket and placed the key beside his father's silver watch. One represented the man he had been taught to become. The other represented the people he had learned to see. He had once believed ownership ended at the signature on a deed. Now he understood that every address carried lives, fears, memories, and futures behind its walls. The eviction on the news had looked like someone else's crisis. It had been his failure. Recognizing the address changed one family. Accepting responsibility changed 14,000 doors. And sometimes the first step toward rebuilding a broken system is refusing to look away. The lesson is simple. True success is not measured only by what we build, but by how our choices affect the people living beneath the weight of those decisions. Rules can protect a business, but compassion gives it a conscience. And when we have the power to correct something we caused looking away is no longer ignorance. It is a choice. Real change begins when we listen, accept responsibility, and treat every person with the dignity we would want for ourselves. If this story touched you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you will not miss the next powerful story. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.